I can imagine how frustrated the king must be, because this is an important week for him and indeed for the Queen, because they're going on this state visit to the Vatican City.
Now, what unites much of the nation, Rudy Giuliani and Gyles Brandreth? Well, there's a few possible answers to that, but the one we're looking for is a love of one of the world's most famous bears. No, not Paddington, but Winnie the Pooh. And on Christmas Eve, it'll be 100 years since Pooh first went to print in the London Evening News, and Gyles Brandreth has written about the creator of the honey-loving bear in his new book, Somewhere a Boy and a Bear, and he joins me now to tell us more. Hello, Gyles.
It's good to be with you.
It's great to be with you, Gyles. I have to ask, what's the most you've ever spent on a pair of wellies?
Oh, my goodness. I've only inherited Wellington boots. I don't think I've ever bought them. And of course, you're thinking of Paddington's Wellington boots. And Paddington was interestingly created the creator of Paddington was created in 1926, the year that Winnie the Pooh, the book, was first published. Michael Bond was born then. And the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II, she was born in 1926. So lots of centenaries coming up. And the late Queen, we all assumed that Paddington was her favourite bear, and she did indeed love Paddington, but she also had a soft spot for Rupert Bear. And the Queen told me, if you'll pardon me name dropping, the Queen told me that actually Winnie the Pooh was her first and most favourite, because when she was a little girl, the Songs of Winnie the Pooh was the first book ever dedicated to her. She was Princess Elizabeth in 1928 when A.A. Milne and the composer H. Fraser Simpson wrote to the palace saying, we would like to dedicate these Songs of Winnie the Pooh to Princess Elizabeth, who had just been voted the most famous little girl in the world, alongside, wait for it, Christopher Robin, the real Christopher Robin, A.A. Milne's son, who had been voted the most famous little boy in the world.
Well, what a fantastic weave that leads us to exactly what we're talking about here. Look, what drew you first to the world of Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh? Because I mean, this isn't your first work on the subject. You wrote a play about the Milne family in the 1980s as well, didn't you?
That's true. What first drew me, of course, was my parents, because when I was a little boy in the 1950s, I was brought up on the Winnie the Pooh stories and on the two books of poems that he wrote. When we were very young, now we are six. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. The king asked the queen, and the queen asked the dairymaid, all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I loved that as a child. And when in the 1980s my wife and I started having children, we read the same books to our children. And they seem to work still for them. And that is because they're so well written. And then I thought I could do a show with this. There'd been a side-by-side by Sondheim show about Stephen Sondheim's work, celebrating it. I thought, let's do a side-by-side by Christopher Robin, or side-by-side by Winnie the Pooh, or even side-by-side by A.A. Milne. And the composer I got in touch to help me was a man called Julian Slade, who happened to be the friend, a real friend, of Christopher Robin Milne, who was then in his 60s. He'd been born in 1920. A year later, 1921, he was given this teddy bear, bought from Harrods, English-made teddy bear, made by the company Farnell, called it Winnie the Pooh, and then the stories were written. But he was by then in his 60s. And I knew that he was somebody reluctant to talk about being Christopher Robin and about Winnie the Pooh. I thought, he's not going to want to meet me. I'm a very Tigger-like personality. But Julian Slade, who was the same age as him, knew him well and introduced me. And we got on, quite surprisingly, really well. And I reproduce in the book a letter that he sent to me after we'd written this play called Now We Are 60 about the Milne family, about the complicated relationships between Christopher Robin and his father, and indeed with the imaginary bear as well. He wrote me a letter saying, I think you've got our family just about right.
Well, so the family, they came to somewhat resent Pooh, it seems. So tell me about the family's relationship with Pooh.
Profoundly resent him. I mean, Winnie the Pooh made A.A. Milne very rich and very famous, but not very happy. He saw himself, A.A. Milne, as a writer across the board. He was really best known as a playwright. 100 years ago, he had plays running in the West End and on Broadway simultaneously. He was a hugely successful playwright and novelist. And he resented the fact that Winnie the Pooh came to dominate his whole life. All anybody was ever asking about was Winnie the Pooh. That frustrated him. The boy, Christopher Robin, when he was a little boy, he and the bear were inseparable. And he quite liked the stories, quite liked being famous, voted the most famous little boy in the world, having his photograph taken, autograph, being even made a record, singing, Little boy kneels at the foot of the bed. But when he grew a bit older, sent away to boarding school, there was another recording of that by Vera Lynn, and the older boys began to tease him, playing that record. to the extent that he actually found the record in the common room, took it into the woods and sort of broke it into 100 pieces and buried it. And when he grew up, he actually resented his father. He has accused him in the 1940s, when he was lost, didn't know what to do with his life, and in his 20s, he accused his father, saying, his father had built his reputation by standing on a small boy's shoulders.
Wow.
So this is a book about a fractured family, and about the nature of childhood, and about growing up, and about family life. And it's fascinating. You were talking to Rory Stewart there, who I know and like, and was a guest on my podcast Rosebud, where we asked people, what is your very first memory? And doing this podcast over the last couple of years, I've realized that childhood is everything, that our childhood lasts forever. And some people had wonderful childhoods, as did A.A. Milne.
Yeah.
Some people had terrible childhoods, but he had a good childhood. And in a way, what he does in the Winnie the Pooh stories is give you a golden childhood. It is an enchanted place.
Oh, I would say some of my earliest and fondest childhood memories are laughing about Pooh with his head stuck in a honey jar. So that's absolutely true. Look, Gyles, because we are essentially a political show, I have to ask you about some of the politics of Pooh. Would it be fair to say you have beef with Rudy Giuliani, because he stopped the original Winnie the Pooh cuddly toy from coming back to London, didn't he?
And he certainly did. Winnie the Pooh went to America in 1947 and has stayed there ever since, because neither Christopher Robin nor A.A. Milne wanted him particularly in the UK. And he is treasured at the New York Public Library, where he is their main attraction. And people have over the years tried to bring him back. There was a Labour MP in the 1990s who went over and said, he doesn't look very well here, I want him back in England. And Mayor Giuliani turned up at the New York Public Library with honey, saying, this bear is not leaving New York. He's got a green card. We're keeping him here. He's a world citizen. This country's been built on immigration. We welcome Winnie the Pooh. I am trying to arrange for Winnie the Pooh to come back for a brief visit, because he's happy in America. But I think during his centenary year, I'd like to have him on Pooh Sticks Bridge, playing Pooh Sticks once again in the Ashdown Forest. So I'm working on that. But it's a big diplomatic task, because they don't want to let him go.
I mean, David Cameron and Barack Obama have both been involved as well in trying to lure Pooh home, have they not?
I fear I reveal this to you, how the president of the New York Public Library was called by the White House. We want your Winnie the Pooh because we want to let David Cameron take him back to England. And the New York Public Library said, no, I'm sorry, no go. So even the president and the prime minister have not yet succeeded in getting Pooh back. So I'm trying a more diplomatic route. And because I'm lucky enough to be a trustee of the Queen's Reading Room, which is Queen Camilla's charity for encouraging the joy of reading, and she loved the Winnie the Pooh stories, she said to me, if you can get this bear back, even for a holiday, I'm sure we'd be happy to put him up at Windsor Castle or at Buckingham Palace. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace on a regular basis, and it'd be nice for him to see it from the inside out. So there'd be no mere Airbnb for Pooh and the other animals who are there. And they've got Kanga, they've got no Roo.
No Roo?
There should be a trigger warning. Let me just tell you, Roo, I'm afraid, I think was eaten by a dog in the Ashdown Forest.
Oh, no.
I know.
Surely, Gyles, a Tigger warning. Anyway,
very good.
Look, Gyles, I must ask. The Royals have come up several times in this conversation. You've been very close to the Royals for a long, long time. They're not having a super week. What are your reflections on everything that's going on there? How are they all feeling? What does the future hold for Prince Andrew?
Oh, I mean, I can imagine. I don't know, but I can imagine how frustrated the King must be, because this is an important week for him, and indeed for the Queen, because they're going on this state visit to the Vatican City. The King is all about, in terms of faith. Faith is important to him, and the faiths are important to him, whether it's the Baha'i faith, whether it's Buddhism. The idea of praying with the Pope, the first time I think the head of the Anglican Communion and the head of the Catholic Church are going to be actually praying together. Since the Reformation, nothing quite like this has happened. So that's what he is focusing on, and to have this not sideshow, this major story about his brother going on is very frustrating. My hope is, I don't think it will go away. I don't think it matters whether you take people's titles or not. The story is actually the behavior of the individual involved. So that will go on till it reaches the end of the road. My hope is that what the King is doing and the Queen is doing, and people see they're doing well, people can focus on that.
We've got to leave it there. Gyles Brandreth, thank you so much. And look, Somewhere, a Boy and a Bear, The Remarkable Life of A.A. Milne and the Legacy of Winnie the Pooh is out now. Gyles Brandreth, thank you very much.